In this video, I will be going over another aspect of time that everyone should know. So, time is very important, okay? I'm going to be going over something called macros, and a macro is a time and price where it will typically make a good move or a run on liquidity. And if the market has been choppy, a good move will happen during a macro time. Now, sorry. Sorry again. My opinion on macro times are mixed. It all started with 9:50 to 10:10 is a macro time. 10:50 to 10:50 to 11:10 is a macro time. And all of a sudden, a year later, now apparently every time is a macro time. Make it make sense, please. But here's the thing. Macro times are important. They technically, so what ICT said recently is a macro time occurs at the first 10 minutes of the new hour and the last 10 minutes of the hour. So 9:50 to 10:10, 10:50 to 11:10, because the hourly candle changes, and this is when we often get a run on the liquidity. And that's where he gets his macros. Now, another belief is every macro occurs from 8:20 to 8:40 or 9:20 to 9:40. So that being said, there's only 20 minutes that's not a macro time. Now, on my Twitter, I asked my guy Hydra about this because he always uses the 8:20 to 8:40 macro times, which is fine. And yeah, let me just show you guys what I mean. So here's one of the setups he took. Okay, good execution, whatever, and he has 10:20 to 10:40 labeled. And you can see this line, we run the macro right at the end of this, which is cool. So I shot him a DM, and I'm like, hey, Hydra. Show you what I said. I go, what are the macro times you use? Because I just want to see what his thought process was. Every hour there's one. And I asked, why is his 8:20 to 8:40 and ICTs are different? And he goes, because price also offers repetitive moves inside those 20 to 40 macros as well. So I'm like, so every time there's a macro time besides 40, 50. And he goes, every hour there's one, but not every hour they are high probability. Some signatures and price make them high and low probability. And this is honestly what I loved, because the more you trade, the more you're going to understand the clean signature and price. If you look at Hydra's feed, he always posts really good clean signatures and price. And you'll know this from time and just watching the market a ton. But anyways, every single one he posts during a macro is a really good signature and price. There's always a stop hunt. There's always a delivery or bounce from an opposite or opposing fair value gap. I mean, they're just really, really nice executions. All right. So that's that. Now, I do not see him post losses. He should post losses. He definitely takes losses. So honestly, I don't know why. He obviously wants to look good for marketing purposes, but that's okay. So that being said, what are the macro times? Well, I'm just gonna turn on an indicator. Just type in macro ICT. So these are the macros. All right, and you can see really nice macro. So 9:50 to 10, 9:50 to 10:10, 10:50 to 11:10. Now, the first thing you're going to notice is almost every macro time is going to run some sort of liquidity. So you can see we run this high in this macro time. This one moves a lot. We run everything in this. We actually ran low a day in this macro time. And it's a time where price loves to move. Now, it's not going to be 100% of the time. Okay? It's not going to be 100% of the time. You got these macros as well, which we run the low here and we fail to run the high here. We run low day here, and then we actually just ran this high at the end of the macro, which is kind of cool. But it's not going to be like that every time. There will be choppy macros. Let's see. Honestly, really bad example. All these are really good macros. You can see they run all run liquidity, which is kind of cool because this was the macro should do. But you can see they'll run liquidity, except this one. This doesn't run any major highs, but this one runs a major high. It runs this kind of trend line liquidity, which is nice. This one runs all these lows here, which is kind of trend line liquidity. But you can see all the macros make a decent move. All right. Now, these are not all the macro times. Okay. These are not all the macro times. There's 850 to 910. There's 750 to 810, but that's not a kill zone. I would not trade that. There's all different. Again, there's 1150 to 1210, which that's the lunchtime macro. Okay, so if I go to 1150 to 1210, this is the lunchtime macro. Now this doesn't run shit. This doesn't run anything. Honestly, it should have ran these lows, but it didn't. So you can see this is a bad example, but it's not going to be the same every time. Now you're probably wondering, should I only take my setup during a macro? I kind of had that thought too, but here's the thing. Based off of Hydra's belief and based off of other people's belief, there's also a macro from that 1020 to 1040 time. So for example, 1020 right here to 1040. Now, why is this important? Well, if you see a macro from 1020 to 1040 and you see that good signature and price that may represent your model, then you can still trade during that time. It's still a fine trade. A lot of people think they just have to trade the macro, but you can trade if you see the good signature and price. So what might a good signature and price be? Well, a good signature and price might be something like this. We sweep some sort of low. It doesn't have to be a big low. It just has to be a low that's obvious. We get some sort of inversion, fair value gap or something here. We get some sort of market structure shift. And we have some sort of, let's say, equal highs above. So like this. We have a double top above we're going to go hit. That would be a good signature and price. And if you see this during any of those macros, whether it be 950 to 1010 or 1020 to 1040, it's a good trade, or it's likely a good trade. And that's where I stand with macros. I think signature and price is important, and if they're in a macro, great. A lot of them probably will be, because that's usually when we get good signature and price, right? You don't need to look for the signature and price first and then verify to see it's in a macro. If it's not in a macro, let's say you see a setup and you're kind of hesitating. You're like, I don't know if this is a good setup. And it's not in a macro. It's not during a 950 to 1010, or it's not between 1020 to 1040, then don't take the setup, especially if you hesitate. But if you see a setup, you think it's really good, and it's also in a macro time, then it probably is good, because that's where most good signatures and price will form of your model. Like honestly, this is the best model in the world right here. Equal highs above, took out some low, inverse the fair value gap here, market structure shift. We're going to go to the highs 90% of the time in this situation. This is the best model in the world. Note it. Okay. But again, macro times are important because that's when good signatures or price will form. And yeah, I mean, pay attention to them. We should run a major liquidity during the macro time. We obviously run this high right at the end of this macro, which is kind of cool. And if we don't, that could be a red flag. You're going to have to study that on your own, but just be cautious, okay? But that's kind of what the macro times are. They're just times where we run a low or we get a high, we get good signature and price, and a decent move occurs. So the best trades will be taken during these times, and that's why time and price is so important. Like if it's from 1010 to 1020, not as good. You want it to be during the macro time, which can be 1020 to 1040 or 950 to 1010, 1050 to 1110. The last 10 minutes of the hour, the first 10 minutes of the hourly, or the middle 20 minutes, so 20 to 40. Okay, so just remember those times, study these times, see what happens during those times. You're not going to get good at macros or understand what the macro should do unless you trade them. But don't make trading during a macro your whole strategy. If you see good signature and price, take it and journal it. Journal the time. See if it's in a macro. That's how you're going to get better. Okay. And it takes years. I know it's tough. It's very tough. It's going to take you years to figure out, but that's what a macro time is. I just want a simple explanation of it, and let me know if you guys have any questions. Peace.